Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of Wine, Women, and Words. Michelle, do not make me laugh. I don't do the
I
openings
can't.
very much, and then keep making me laugh. So, as you can tell, this is Diana, and joining us, as always, is Michelle.
Hello.
And our guest this evening is Donna Hill, and we are here to talk to her about her wonderful book, I Am Ayah. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. This is fun.
So, for those who are not familiar with the book, could you give us a brief synopsis?
Okay. It's so funny you said it because like I teach writing classes and I always tell my students, you always have to have your elevator pitch ready in case somebody says, so what is your book about? You need to tell them in 2 sentences. Well, I've never been able to do that, so I just want to let you know. Um, so I Am Aya is a story of a young woman, a contemporary woman who has for all of her life rejected her legacy in her past. And that was a result of her mother instilling in her as a Black woman that our past is so difficult and it's, fraught with ugliness and trauma. We're not going to ever, revisit any of that. You don't need to know anything about that. We're going to start this new history, this new legacy. So this is a young girl, Alexandra, who grows up believing that, that what is here is now. And her father, who she's been estranged from for close to a decade, um, has an accident. And she has to return home to Sag Harbor to take care of him because her mother has passed when she was 15. So when she's has started to have um, auditory sensations, and this was prior to her returning home. Like she would like smell the ocean all of a sudden, or damp earth, just like would overwhelm her. And she didn't understand what was happening. And she's a photographer, so she returns home, and so the story is about um, what begins to happen as she slowly uncovers her past, a very rich historical past. And so the story is crafted in alternating voices. So we have our contemporary character who is experiencing these things in real time. And then we have her discoveries and the voices of her matriarchal ancestors that we find out were involved in different points in history, and how all of this is leading her to discover who she really is and where she really came from. So that's what the story is about.
I want to say I'm about a third of the way through, and we intentionally do that because one time, one of us
Oh, you can go ahead and call me out. I did it. I was the one
uh,
who accidentally let out a
Spoiler.
spoiler.
let loose a substantial spoiler. Um, and so we typically try not to finish it to avoid doing spoilers. But this is a book that I was like, well, I have to finish it. So it was very hard to be like, okay, just if we can finish it afterwards, we don't have to finish it before. But I'm just absolutely loving Alessandra's voice, just hearing the way that you've written this story. It's beautiful. And I just have to say, when you first open the book and you see the list of titles, it's other books by Donna Hill, and it's like 3 columns, a full page.
And
And when you go to your website and you see Donna's books, it's like a whole list. And this is a conversation we've had with many other authors about how we've discussed this topic of each book is a different experience writing it. You never write 2 books the exact same way.
right.
How did you approach this particular book with kind of a historical, not it's not entirely historical fiction, but it has a historical fiction lens through Aya's sections, and I haven't read all of it, so I don't know if there are other voices that enter into it later. Um, was that a different experience for you approaching this writing for this story, or do you have it all kind of figured out just from your extensive uh, book list?
I never wrote a book like this before. My previous book, Confessions in B flat, was also historical. So that was set
Okay.
in the 60s, but everything happened in the 60s. This required, I required extensive research because of the different time periods that she was going to uncover about her ancestors. So, Michele, from when opening the book, it starts in 1839. So clearly, I don't know, I wasn't there, whatever. So, all of the research that had to be done, about that and what happened to that first ancestor when they were brought here. And, her preceding ancestors, they happened to be in Tulsa, during the riots. In Chicago, when Mrs. O'Leary's cow, knocked over the lantern and set the barn on fire and set, Chicago on fire. So, in crafting the book, I had to think about where it started and where I wanted it to end. And then I had to think about what historical events do I want to include in the book. And so once I thought about what I wanted, then I had to look at what was happening during that time period and which one of her ancestors would be there. How old would they be? What's the lifestyle like? All of these different things for all these different time periods, during the Depression, what was that like? And there were all of these different segments that then had to be woven together and then trying to figure out because the finished product was nothing like how me and my editor was sort of like moving pieces around and trying to figure out how to incorporate the voices because you like literally are hearing her ancestors talking through the letters, through the journals. So she becomes immersed in their experience, and so does the reader. So all of the research that had to go into, the different time periods where people were living, how they were living, all of those things, and then putting those pieces together. So this was the construction of it was different. The process of writing was the same because, you have to know who your characters are. You have to know, what your story is. You have to know, kind of like where you're going, what you want to do. So that part of it was the same. But I've never had to um, incorporate so many visceral experiences. And so that was a new challenge for me. So, but I enjoyed it. I liked it a lot.
And that
Michelle.
kind of, oh, sorry, no, you go.
I was gonna say, Michelle, you brought up how many books Donna has written, and I believe we have a new record. I believe
I think
Donna
so.
took the
I
record
thought
from
that.
Vanessa. Vanessa Riley had the record. She was like at 30 something books,
Mhm.
roughly. Uh, from the notes I see here, Donna, you've got more than 100 books.
Yeah.
That is incredible. That is
That's like a
amazing. You are the new
bookcase.
title holder. And for as somebody who has published 2 books and has a third out on submission, how do you keep it fresh? How do you find that drive to be able to just keep going?
Mm. Well, I mean, I think that, part of it is being interested in a lot of different things. right? Because to be a writer, you have to sort of be a citizen of the world. What is happening? What are the things that, interest you? Like I watch the news, I listen to people's conversations, I read books, I go to conferences. So all of these different influences sort of feed you. And ideas come from so many different places. New writers always say, where do you get your ideas from? I just carry ideas around in my pocket. No, it comes from living life and listening to people. One day this experience today, what we're doing, may seem very, light and fun and all of that. But as a writer, this experience becomes part of your toolkit. And so, 5 books that down, I may have a scene where, there's 2, podcasters doing a show. And then I have to go back and think, what was that experience like? What did they have to do? What was the process? And all of these things. And so I try to write about things that interest me,
Mm.
because if I'm not interested in it, then my readers aren't going to be interested in it. So I've done romances is sort of like the wheelhouse of what I do. But even within my romances, I deal with issues other than the romance. The romance is like, okay, well, this is going to happen. We know these people are going to get together, and but what is this really about? And, I've done things like, one of my earlier books, I used to be, this is dating me somewhat, but I was a devout follower of LA Law, one of the early law shows, and there was a scene, a episode about prosecutorial misconduct. I didn't know what in the devil that meant, but I was so intrigued by this thing that was a prosecutorial misconduct. I like did all of this research and literally built a story around that idea.
Mm.
Something as simple as that. So it can come from anything. And I guess that's what's been keeping me going.
Mm.
You all could wind up in a book if you don't be careful.
If we do, please, be favorable. I
Yes, I'll
don't
leave
mind
out all
being
the
a villain, but
glitches. For sure.
If it's like a murder mystery or a thriller, like quick deaths, quick deaths.
Yes,
And
because you guys could be like only murder in the building.
Yeah.
But you know that
mhm,
their whole thing is about their podcast.
Mhm.
we could solve murders.
Yeah. I'm just trying to think of Michelle and I trying to solve murders. I
Yeah, I don't
think
know.
we would be very
Yeah.
organized for that.
So now we talked a little bit about, you have to know your characters and you have to, obviously care about them. Now, in this novel, there are so many complex relationships. I mean, for Alessandra, just having a relationship with Zach or being attracted to Zach and learning how to open herself to trust him because that's something she's never done before. Her relationship with her father is super complex. Her relationship with her mother, even though she's passed, is incredibly complex. She has a lot of guilt surrounding her death. Zach's grandmother, who I love, even he has kind of a complex relationship with her. Um, how, as the writer, sitting down to write these relationships, how do you get to know your characters and these relationships well enough to build those complexities in your writing for a reader to read and become invested in? That was a
Mm,
really long question.
yeah, yeah, but that's a really complex question. Um, well, I think that for me, it's a process of sort of like of layering. So I know that Alessandra is going to be one of the protagonists. I know that Zach is going to be the other protagonist. So those are my two people. And so what about them? And so you build this life about them. What are going to be their obstacles? One of her obstacles is she doesn't want to go back home. Why doesn't she want to go back home? Because she has a bad relationship with her father. Well, what was that relationship? What broke them up? And so I asked myself a lot of whys and what ifs. Because it'll be easy to just say, well, she and her father never got along. And we never know why, or, she was gone for 10 years and just comes back. So you want to always be able to answer that question before the reader asks the question.
Oh, I
And
like that.
and so I try to do that. And then, the characters didn't just come alive when you open the book. They had a life before you opened the book, right? And so, well, what was that life? Who were the people in their lives? And as um even as characters, our our lives are sort of the sum total of our experiences, the people who were in it, the people who influenced us. And so your characters have to have the same thing. They need to, who was her mother, you know? And I knew, and I decided that one of her traumas was going to be the loss of her mom. And I knew what that felt like because I had lost my mother. So I knew what that struggle could feel like. And so you can put that kind of investment in the story. I know what it's like. We all know what it's like to have that loving grandmother or that auntie that we can go to. And so, how do you create this person that everybody can read it and identify? Yeah, I know her. I know her. I love her. And so that's what I try to do with each of them. If I gave them an obstacle or a difficulty, asking myself, why? Okay, well, it's this, and well, how did that happen? And then when it happened, why did it happen? Okay. And so so then you have these complexities and then you have to find a way, because of course you can't do sort of an information dump and just explain everything, in one paragraph. So, you have to find ways to weave these little details in and out of the story. So we don't, we know that something happened with Alessandra and her mom, but we're not really sure what that actually was. Why did she stay away for 10 years? We know we get a hint, we get a little bit of a hint. And as the story is revealed, all of these, different elements come out as well.
Now, one of Diana's favorite conversations is about food in books. And I noticed, I don't know if this is just me being like a little too like, ooh, I feel like there's something there, but I noticed that um at, unless I missed one, but I noticed that every time Alessandra eats, it's someone else bringing her a meal. Like she doesn't go out and get the food and eat herself, but it's someone bringing her food. And
Mm-hmm.
every time there's a meal is when she has kind of those moments of reveal where you learn a little more, or like the food comes right at a really crucial moment for her.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I just thought, I'm going to ask if that was intentional or if that was just me finding something where there wasn't anything.
Um, that's interesting. One thing about food, especially in most families, most cultures, food is a way of being communal. Food is a way that we can sort of put aside the troubles of the day and you sit down and have a meal. And so to offer food or to bring food is a form of community, and it's a form of nurturing. Because for most people, when guests come over, somebody drops by, what's the first thing you say? You want something to eat or drink?
Mhm.
You're hungry? Um, as women, if we're not sitting in the living room, talking, we're sitting around the kitchen table talking, you know. And so that's more of what it represents, than anything like, supernatural or anything like that. Um, but it's just that thing that I can show you I care. I took the time to fix this for you. Share this with me. And so, so that's more of it, than anything else. And then of course, the grandmother has, her recipe, the stew that she
Oh,
made.
that stew. I could practically taste it. I want that recipe.
Yeah. So, and it was an ancestral recipe. So that to me was important, as was and each meal, as you were saying, um is a point of revelation of some sort, because we sit down and we have a conversation over this meal. This meal brought us together, and so we can talk and share.
I know that's one of Diana's favorite things to talk about. Anytime
That's just
there's
because I like
food in a
food.
novel, we have to put on the list Diana's food discussion.
Yes, yes, because and I love the points that you brought up about it shows culture, that whole show don't tell aspect, as teaching writing, that you have to show things. And I think one of the best avenues to show emotion, to show a lot of these think culture, etc., is through the act of food, through showing, whether it's a cultural food that you want to exhibit, or if it's just those emotions that you described with your characters, having
Mhm,
that and having that being a vehicle to show things while
mhm.
you're writing is just, it's so important to literature in and of itself, even if your book doesn't revolve around food itself, but having some of that, it's so important to
Oh yeah,
literature.
yeah, 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 it is.
Now, do you have any tips for being able to, like Michelle, she's saying she can taste the meal itself. Do you
That
have any
stew
tips?
just sounded so good.
Obviously, somebody is hungry and she's thinking about that too. But you're able to create this recipe within the book, not necessarily giving the recipe per se, but this meal that a reader can go ahead and like taste and want. What are some tips that you might have to be able to create that for other writers to do something similar?
Um, well, for me, what I did is, when I was doing my research, I was looking for different African dishes, and that were specific to eh, Sierra Leone, where they, their homeland. What would that be? And so one of the things was the stew. And when I looked up the recipe, it was, these are all of the things that go in it. And so I wanted to find a way to incorporate that. So that was more specific than them going to a restaurant and having drinks.
Mhm.
Um, so that particular recipe, um, it, it was from, it sort of brought two cultures together, the past and the present together. It opens up the doorway between Alessandra and Grandma O. It allowed Alessandra to realize that somebody cares about me, that she's going to send this over for me. This woman that I don't, if she hadn't even actually met her at that point when she first had that meal. And so that was important. And then, of course, the repast for her dad, and this is not a spoiler because it happens in the story, but and all of the people coming together to like bring all the different foods that they could share. So it plays a part. It's about the food is about love,
Mhm.
and the sharing.
Mhm.
Yeah, but I mean, you need if it's going to be something specific other than they went to the restaurant and had steak. So what about it? So there were certain things like when I wanted them to go to a particular restaurant and have a particular kind of meal. And so I had to, I would look things up and like, what do they serve at, Chef Alaze's restaurant or something like that, and find out what's on the menu. And so like I have menus at home, I look menus up online. If I know I want my characters to go to a particular restaurant, what would they be looking for? What would they get? Those types of things. And then I look for the ingredients and how to put it together. So that they can talk about it. Yeah.
Sorry, I have an 8-year-old who is not upstairs in bed where he should be.
Oh,
So just reminding him that if he is going to be downstairs, it's quiet time. Now, I think just for a moment, we just have to talk about the cover because this cover is just absolutely stunning. Were you able to, I know, I don't know, I'm not published, but I know so many hands, play a part in the cover art. Were you able to help design it in any way beyond like, yes, I like this, no, I like that?
I
Because
I
it's just beautiful.
yeah, it's it's a look that the publishers, I believe, I hope, are developing for the books that I write for them. Rather than having a lot of times, you have people on the cover or you have like a real scene. And so this is more that kind of art. My
Hmm.
previous book was similar. I was like stunned. This particular book, we went through a couple of iterations of it. So we had the images. Her head wrap originally was a different color. She was faced the other way. And so, we kind of played around with it and got the colors right until, we got the look that everybody agreed on. And then it was like, yes, this is it. Yeah. Yeah.
It is.
So it
It's like its
wasn't,
own. Oh, I'm
yeah.
sorry.
So it wasn't one of those things where, they ask, well, what ideas do you have for the cover? And you tell them your ideas, and then something else shows up on the cover anyway. So it was really, a very collaborative experience.
It's its own artwork in itself. I feel like you could frame that
Yeah.
and not even have a book behind it.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. It's beautiful. Yeah.
Well, I know we said roughly half an hour, and we have gone a little bit over that. Um, and one of the we used to always ask, what are you working on now, or is there anything in the works? But um, we have started asking, what are you reading? What are you reading right now, just for fun, not research or not planning for another story, but what have you picked up that you're
Um,
loving?
for fun, what did I read recently? I've been doing a lot of ebooks as opposed to like sitting down reading because my eyes get so tired these days. So the last thing I read, let me cheat for a minute and look at my order.
Yes,
Um,
cheating is allowed on this podcast. It's
right? I'm so
okay.
glad it's like not on camera. Let me see. I just finished Empty Vows by Mary Monroe.
Mhm.
I I was on a Mary Monroe kick, and then I read Mrs. Wiggins. I read The Other Mothers by Catherine Faulkner. That was really good. Black Cake. by Charmaine Wilkerson. They actually made that into a TV movie. The House of Eve by Shadiqua
Ooh.
Johnson. I finished that one. And then completely in the opposite direction, Resurrection Walk by Michael Connolly. I finished that. I started Queen of Exiles by Vanessa Riley. I didn't finish that one yet. The First Ladies by Victoria Christopher Murray, and Marie Benedict. And I just, and I read all kinds of stuff. So that's just the short list of, of stuff. What am I currently looking at now? I'm reading right now The Sleeping Car Porter, and I want to read it to enjoy it, but it's also part of research, unfortunately. Yeah. So I do the audio books so that that's sort of my little escape. So that I'm not tied down, to the book. And that helps a lot. Yeah,
I'm a huge fan of audiobooks.
Same here.
just listening to especially if they have a good narrator. Because I've gotten some books and the narrator, I just couldn't stand them. And it throws me off with the book. But so I've been lucky so far. And I have to admit, and I have to say this, and this is the narrator for I've listened to maybe a half a chapter of all of the books that I have that have gone audio, because it's like, oh God, I don't want to listen to it. I listened to I Am Ayah on audio, and it just like totally blew me away. There were like parts that like I was getting chills. I almost cry at the end, and I wrote the stuff. But this narrator is so good. She's so good. And she has the different inflections for the different characters, and it was a wonderful experience. I'm ashamed to say, I've actually listened to my own book twice. That's how good she is. She's really, really good.
I've been switching off between listening to it and reading it, and she brings there is something so beautiful about the perfect combination of a well-written book and the perfect narrator, and
Yeah.
they just bring it to life in a completely different way.
Yeah.
And that's what it's a very good audiobook.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I was captivated from her opening line.
Hmm.
Let me tell you a story. And I was like, ooh, okay.
Tell me.
Yeah. She's really good. Yeah. So that everybody knows her name, Bianca Drew. That's her name.
Is this the first time she's narrated a book for you?
Yes. Yes, she is. It's the first time she's done this. Yeah. So I gave such high praises to her. So hopefully, the next book that I do with Entangled, they'll use her as well. Yeah, she's really, really good.
She is. Well, everyone, if you would like to read I Am Ayah, The Way Home, it is out in the world. Yes, yes.
Oh yeah.
And you can always check out our show notes and click on our link to our bookshop on bookshop.org to order your own copy. As always, bookshop.org supports our incredible writers. It supports the podcast, but most importantly, it supports all the wonderful indie bookstores out there. And Donna, thank you so much for just taking time out of your night to come chat with us and hang out. It was such a pleasure to pick your brain and basically make you give us a writing workshop tonight.
Thank you so much for having me. This was fun.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.